We'll give it a minute. It's a little early. Maybe I should send out an all points bulletin. Okay. Hold on. We got some tents up today. We put up 2 tents outside, so it'll be easier for people to have them outside.
Are you planning to daven inside on Shabbos?
Yeah, one outside, one inside. You'll hear. Oh my goodness. Okay. Hold on. Yeah, we're gonna have a minyan. I think we're gonna have an 8 o'clock outside and an 8:30 inside. Again, we can't, and you have to sign up because it's not enough space. You know, we have a limited amount. We have more room outside than inside.
What becomes of the Shabbos daf yomi?
No, we're gonna still do it on Zoom. We still do it Motzei Shabbos till we figure this out. What?
Still Motzei Shabbos, not at 7:30.
Not yet. Not until, you know, we get a little better grip on. Let me just do one more thing. I'm sorry. Oh gosh, hold on. Chats. Hold on. We have time. Is this Chizuk? No. One second. Chizuk, here. Okay. Copy. Chizuk time. Hold on. Chizuk time. Starting in a moment. Thank you for coming early, even though I didn't start on time. Okay, here we go. Okay, maybe people join. Okay, so here we are. I wanted to continue. It's still Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. We still have a mincha to go. So I just want to finish off with another piece that I saw in Rav Tzadok. He says, and again, it's also obviously Kabbalistic and all sorts of mystical illusions, but every month has an association with a letter. And the letter that associates with Tammuz is the letter Ches. And the question is why? What's the connection between Ches? And Rav Tzadok points out, going with his continued theme about, light and the Re'iyah, right? We spoke about yesterday about the faculty of the human body that corresponds to this month is Re'iyah, and we spoke about how you see things, and we spoke about at length yesterday. How perspective, and he says interestingly that the Ches, which is the letter that's associated, the letter Ches, is associated with the month of Tammuz. The strange part about that is because the first time that the letter Ches appears is when it's associated with the word Choshech. So Ches is Choshech, yet he speaks about the light of the Re'iyah and Vayar Elikim Esar Kitayv, which is related to the month of Tammuz, which should have been the giving of the Torah, right? With instead of the breaking of the Luchos, it was foiled, but this was so how could it be that the letter Ches? So that he quotes a Zohar that says the following. He said, the Zohar says, there's no light but which comes from Choshech. And Choshech is a vehicle to contrast and see what light is. Without Choshech, you don't know what light is. Nehira is nafik migav chashoicha. That's what he says. And I was thinking like this. I want to add something. Then I'm going to take you to an idea, and we'll get to the topic I want to talk about today. There's an expression when you talk about a blind person. The Gemara doesn't call him, sumo sometimes, an iver, but the Gemara often uses a euphemism. And the euphemism that they use, if everyone's familiar, a sagi nohar. Someone who's abundant in light. Sagi is Aramaic for abundant, and nahar is light. And normally we say it's a euphemism. That's what it is. It's like we don't want to say blind. We don't say something negative. So you use a euphemistic term, which means something that alludes to something else. We say it in a positive way. But it's been noted that we don't say when someone is mute, we say he's a sagi dibur. You don't say someone who's crippled that he's sagi halicha. Now, you don't find that by any other disability. It's only by, why did Chazal, only by a blind person, did it say that he's sagi nohar? So I saw this in a few places. I think it's attributed to some of the early Hasidic masters. I thought of it on my own, but I saw it's quoted in different svarim. I forgot which one it was, which one of the great masters. I forgot, the Rimanover or something like that. But he said, I was thinking like this, the truth is that, light, like we spoke yesterday, it's amazing. You could see, but at the end of the day, you can only see how much light your eyes are capable of seeing. We can't even see all colors, like we spoke yesterday. And again, you're limited to, you can only see a certain amount of distance, right? But when, the faculty of understanding, the inner eye that we have, which rises above, because the world around us can be an illusion. It doesn't really, not really what it appears, but we don't see the cellular structure, we don't see the deeper, and it could be a mirage. There's certain things that we see and it doesn't quite reflect on the essence of what it is. But, just like a blind man who doesn't have the ability to walk, they enhance other faculties that give them sort of a different type of a sonar. They can sense and hear and feel and walk and manage because they have an acute sense, other senses that become acute. In the same sense, when we have a connection to the ultimate intelligence, and we rein it, we extend our antenna to receive that information. So that's really the ultimate light that we need. And maybe what it means is sagi nor, because someone who's blind, someone who's in the darkness, develops a higher level of intellect, a higher level of perception in a certain way that cannot be diluted by the limitations of the physical world around us. We only see the outside. We don't see the atoms, the nucleus, the neutron, the neurons that turn around and what's really functioning. It's really an illusion. You don't see the essence. You see a superficial sense of what everything is, but not the deeper sense. But if you delve deeper and you go on the higher level of real wisdom, and you come to an intelligence and an awareness and a comprehension that's greater than sight. And it's interesting because that's what the Gemara says in Menachos, that the letter Ches has, the way it's constructed, has a chaytris. It has like the way we write it is two zions with a little hump, like a camel's hump. A chaytris, it says. And that's how you write it, because, and the Gemara says, why? Because the heightened peak on the Ches reflects on the Rumay Shel Olam. It's sort of like an antenna that go up and say, we really absorb our information from a higher source, a more refined sense of perception that really goes beyond the physical, the limited physical perception. Although it seems magnificent, but one can be deluded by that, and one can be fooled. One can see it too shallow and really not see the depth. But when you really get, and maybe that's what it means, sagi nahar, because really, even sometimes when you're missing a faculty of the physical sight, but you become more attuned and acute in the perception, that's a deeper perception, and it's really an abundance of light. And maybe that's what the Rav Tzadok means. So what I want to get to is the following. We have time till 8:25 is mincha, so we have a little time because I started early. So I started, 8 o'clock. So I want to say like this, I'm going to come to a practical example of this in Beinam L'Chavera. We're talking about God and perceiving and understanding and Emunah last night we spoke about and things like that. I want to bring it to a practical level. We're entering into Tammuz, which segues into Av, and it goes to Avas Chsinas Chinam and all that stuff. So I want to bring this idea of a higher sense, a higher perception, and not to be deluded by what we physically see around us, by going back to several episodes we've had in Chumash in the last few weeks. There are 3 episodes in the Torah about not talking Lashon Hara. So the first episode, of course, is the story of Yosef. He brought a bad report to his father about his brothers. Then we have the story of Miriam, who spoke ill of Moshe Rabbeinu with good intentions. Everyone was good intentions. Yosef was also with good intentions, right? And Miriam also has good intentions, but it was misguided. She was faulted for it. And she also spoke Lashon. The third one is the Meraglim. The Meraglim also, they thought they were helping. They thought they could do it. We're going to get into a quagmire. We're going to be, it's not going to be, we're not going to succeed. But whatever it was, that was the third one. Now the Rambam, I'm going to go step back a second. The Rambam, when he talks at the end of the laws of Taras, he gives a long exposition about Lashon Hara, because Taras comes from it. One of the things he says, and I don't have the Rambam in front of me, but one of the things he says is that Lashon Hara, and he says something interesting. If you would have to pick the bad midah that is the seed for Lashon Hara, what would you say? Kina, Sina, right? They're kas, a lot of different things, right? Kas, Sina, Kina. I mean, the Rambam says when he refers to the people who speak Lashon Hara, he says the tipshim, the fools, the people who are foolish. And he emphasizes tipshim. In other words, tipshus, being foolish, being foolish, lacking intellect. That's the source of Lashon Hara. He used that phrase in his Yad HaChazaka. When he talks in the end of Tumas Saras, he talks about tipshim. And actually, in the Vidu, we do say, and it refers to Lashon Hara. Al chet shechatanu b'tipshus peh. We talk foolish. There's a special one for tipshus. What is this tipshus that we're talking about? And I've noticed this, and there's an interesting thing. All the three lessons of Lashon Hara in the Torah all have two in Chumash and one in the Navi, as you can see. Touches on the idea that the people who spoke were foolish. Because it says about Yosef Tzaddik, what was he called? He was called a Nar. It was Nar as B'nai Vilha, right? It says he was Nar as B'nai Vilha. V'hu Nar as B'nai Vilha. He acted foolishly because he was defending the B'nai Vilha, the Shvachos, from the brothers and the way they treated them. But it refers to him as a Nar. And what does it say over there, the Nar? It says that he was Oisa Maisa Nairis. And the Baal HaTurim says, interesting, that a Nar, the word Nar is the same gematria as the word Shaita. Shaita, someone who lacks intelligence. A Nar. He had the impetuous of youth. He didn't really have the wisdom of maturity. So the Torah already said about him also, Tipshim. The Rambam chose the word Tipshim. He found it somewhere. And it's actually, because the word Nar, which the Chazal focus on, Yosef's impetuous response to his brothers, protecting, of course, all for good, but there was a certain level of tipshus, of foolishness. The second one is, if you remember the Chumash, Aaron HaKohen appeals to Moshe and says, forgive us, Asher Nayalnu v'Asher Chatanu. A Nayalnu is a Lashon of it means we acted foolishly. Asher Nayalnu Chatanu, forgive us, for we have been foolish and we have sinned. Again, Nayalnu is a Lashon, is a verb that's used for foolishness. And the final one, the Meraglim, although it's not in Chumash, but the Midrash brings very often, it's a pasuk we're familiar with, a pasuk from Shlomo Melech, Maitzi Diba, which refers to the Maitzi Diba, or the Diba Saaretz. Maitzi Diba, those who produce a Diba, who Ksil is a fool. So Chazal, the two times the Chumash tells us, Yosef was an Aaron and Miriam acted, Nayalnu, we acted foolishly, and the Meraglim spoke with foolishness. And I looked around, and based on the Malbim and Rav Hirsch, he says, there are three verbs, there are three nouns used here: Nar, Evil, and Ksil. And they say the following. This is a conglomeration of what they say. It says, Nar is the impetuous of youth. Kids think they know everything. They know they're smarter than their fathers, they're smarter than, the Rebbe, they're smarter than everybody. That's just a nature that, we have a foolish attitude that we think they know it all until, of course, they grow up. And that's the impetuousness, and that's Nar. Evil refers usually to someone who has a level of intelligence, but again, they're a little smug with their knowledge, and they think they know better. And the first case is Yosef. The second case is Miriam, because I'm a Navi also, Hashem speaks to us. Are we different than you, Moshe? She had intelligence, but there was an Evil, but there was still a little too much smug, and she acted foolishly. I mean, they said it themselves. I'm not Hashem castigating him. And Ksil, Rav Hirsch and the Malbim say, refers to someone who's blinded by his passion. They're blinded by ulterior motives that sometimes blind us, and we act stupid because we get so stuck on what we want that it blocks our ability to see things properly. We don't see things accurately. And that's ksil. That's how they say ksil is. And that's exactly what happened with the Meraglim. Meraglim thought they would lose their leadership, and they got so caught up with their own needs that it blinded them, and they were foolish. It blocked intelligent thinking. So and that's where it begins and that's where it ends. We see things, we judge people, and we think we have all the information, and we jump to conclusions. Sometimes we jump to conclusions we have no right to. We're just like childish. We just, think we know everything, but we don't even have the basic knowledge. Very often we're very sophisticated and we're accomplished, and we think we know it all. And we have a little too much confidence, and we make mistakes too, and we judge. And very often, and most often, our own personal needs are covered, a taivus, whatever it is, a stature, blocks us from seeing other people objectively because we're so caught up in ourselves and our own personal needs. And that's really why the Rambam said it's tipshus, because we act stupid. We're stupid. We think we know everything we don't. And that's what I think what this lesson is. Chayshech, Tammuz, Riyah. Of course, Chayshech is, we think, it's dark when it's not really dark. There's a light, there's a higher intelligence, a higher perception. And we're blocked from seeing things sometimes because our flesh eyes are not capable of absorbing everything. But if we elevate and we're tuned to the Torah and how to assess things based on the Torah's direction of how to judge people favorably and all those details that define our relationship, then we'll learn that we have a different perception and different conclusions. We won't act foolishly. So I want to share with you a story, and that's why it's all leading up to the story. This is a Yoel Gold story. Amazing story. It's a COVID story also, but it's an amazing story. Not amazing, but a very, very touching story. And I think we can all relate to it and probably come up with 1,000 situations in our life where we also acted and made judgments that were so off mark. And if we would only, realize that we're not as smart as we think we are. So this fellow lives in Far Rockaway, and he's describing how in the early days of COVID, he was davening first on the porch, and then when there was nearly any traffic, they davened in the street, of course, with distancing and all that. And, it was at the peak, it was at the beginning when, people were falling left and right, the people were dying. I mean, there were thousands in America, it was thousands of 1,000 from Yin that passed away. And they're middle of davening, and, they started this outdoor davening when it started. And there was one fellow every day, consecutively, he takes out his phone in the middle, and he takes a selfie of himself. Like it would be a picture opportunity. Hey, we're down there. Hey, no shul, it's a whole, and he's taking a picture of himself in the talis and tefillin, and he's taking a selfie. So, the guy thinks to himself, there's an unprecedented plague sweeping the globe. And his neighbor, this neighbor of his that he never even knew because, New York is a little different than Baltimore. And, he suddenly see people came out of the cracks and he starts seeing people you don't see, and he's posing for his followers on Facebook or something. Or maybe he's doing an ad for a talis company, he's thinking to himself. So he says, how can a frum guy, people are dying, how can he take selfies? So, one day he started to be a little facetious, he thought he's smart. And he came over to the guy, he didn't want to tell him, punch him in the nose. So he says, maybe you need a photographer, selfies never come out as good as when someone else takes it. The guy says, no, so it's fine. And meanwhile, he thought that his half serious teasing would get the message across, but the guy didn't get it. The next day, nothing changed. Not the day after, day in, day out. And he says the display of narcissism of this guy, it just blew him away, got under his skin. Finally, he thinks to himself, people are dying every hour. Countless gedolim had been lost. Millions of people have lost their jobs. And every day he got a little more caustic in his response to this guy because he was so sure that this guy was a jerk and he was affronting him. And finally one day he blew it and he just says, do you really need a selfie now? Do you really need to take a selfie? And he just couldn't hold it out. So the guy calm turns to him and he says this following. He says, you don't understand. I'll read it to you. Let me show you my selfies. He held out his phone and he shows it to the guy. He says, look. And he didn't even want to look, this guy, but he said, I'm telling you, look, trust me. And he sees that is a picture of himself, and every picture alternates with another guy that he doesn't recognize, wasn't in the minyan, and also wearing talis and tefillin. And he says, scroll through the album. He says, look, I'm going to scroll and you watch. And he shows him about 200 selfies, back and forth, back and forth. The picture of his neighbor that he sees every day that, he's blowing his gun over. And this other guy, he doesn't know who it is. And he says, I want to tell you something. Back in September, I was introduced to this guy. He was raised frum, but he was a troubled kid. He had issues, struggled with frumkeit, and ended up going off the derech. We met through doing business, and we really hit it off. When the pandemic hit, we made a deal. He wasn't frum, this guy. He had gone off the derech. Every day that I put on talis and tefillin, he promised to match me and do the same. Every morning I snap the selfie and I send it to him. And every morning I get one back from him. It's simple. I don't ask anything else from him, but slowly he is making his way back. This guy says he was speechless and embarrassed. The past few months have created many memories, both heartwarming and terrible, snapshots of an extraordinary challenge this community has never experienced before. But I've taken this interaction to change a man's perception. He walked away with renewed respect for his neighbor, whom he had seen as a simple, shallow man, obsessed with selfies. But he reflected perhaps it was he who had never truly understood the power of an image, and he misjudged, and he thought he knew it all. He thought he was right, but he acted like a fool. Mighty Dibu Huxil. So often we open our mouths and we say the things, and we're the idiots. We're pointing fingers and we don't even know what's going on. Okay, this is a dramatic story. You know, how he really, it was amazing. And sometimes, maybe the other guy is an idiot. But, you have to judge for you. You don't know what's going on, why someone's acting a certain way, what happened, what he's going through in life and all that. So I think it's a great lesson for all of us. This is the Chiddush of Tammuz, about Re'iyah, about seeing things, opening our eyes, not just seeing what's physically in front of us, but what's in other people's hearts, and raising our antenna to see that little tip on the ches, which is Chaim, which means we draw our life from Merumah Shalaylam, from seeing the world from a different perspective, not from a minimalistic view, just through our flesh and blood eyes, to really see from a Jewish heart, a Jewish mind, a Jewish soul, that we have to look and understand and see things in a different perception. If we do that, we'll be zeicha to attach ourselves to the Chaim, Merumah Shalaylam, and we'll learn to see things properly. And hopefully, if we see things properly, and Hashem will let us see our eyes coming back to Shalayim Yakadosh Mitzvah Hashem. Thank you very much. I hope this is my little, let me say hello to everybody. Have a few minutes here. Nice, thank you.